We have a lot to discuss on this episode of the MeidasTouch podcast. You had Donald Trump in Iowa, and then at some weird speech with Nicki Minaj attacking people for wanting things to be more affordable, attacking the idea of low-income housing as Nicki Minaj with those 4-inch nails clung to Donald Trump's deteriorating and rotting hand. Also, we saw more instances of Donald Trump's demented mind rotting before us in public. We'll go through that. Donald Trump continued to have a psychotic meltdown at night, further defaming Alex Pretty, calling him a domestic terrorist last night, saying that former President Obama needs to be arrested for treason. We'll talk about all of that. Oh, and then saying, let the man effing cook. It's very strange behavior. The fact that Tom Homan has replaced Greg Bovino in Minnesota has not really changed things all that much. The ICE and Border Patrol Gestapo continue to terrorize people in Minnesota and throughout the country. We'll talk about that, including the protests outside of the Dilley Detention Center in Texas, where the Trump regime was again using chemical agents and attacking the peaceful protesters. That's where the 5-year-old Liam, who was kidnapped by the Trump regime, is currently being detained at that concentration center with his dad. We'll cover that and more. Trump's polling is absolutely abysmal. The latest Pew poll has him at about 37%, and only 56% of Republicans say that they support his entire agenda. America seems to be poised for yet another war against Iran after Donald Trump said back in June that he totally obliterated the nuclear facilities in Iran. Well, it's taken a few weeks for Donald Trump to get what he refers to as his armada from the Caribbean and to get it near Iran. Trump sold out the protesters against the Ayatollah when Trump said, we're going to get your back if they kill a single protester. But then Trump's ships weren't even there, and now he's threatening what he refers to as his big plan, which sounds like kind of an all-out war against Iran. We'll cover that. Meanwhile, Trump is trying to secretly support, or I guess not so secretly anymore, support fringe separatist groups in Canada to try to get Alberta to secede. We'll talk about that. We're on the verge of another government shutdown because MAGA Mike Johnson put the House of Representatives into recess, adjourned it, sent people home. So even if there is a compromise in the Senate regarding the appropriations package, which, by the way, I would be wholeheartedly against any compromise that doesn't abolish ICE and prosecute ICE and Border Patrol and abolish Border Patrol. But even if there were to be one, it has to go back to the House right now, and the House is on vacation thanks to MAGA Mike. But he's been hanging out with Nicki Minaj and talking about her nails and her jackets, as that's what MAGA Mike's priority are. Lots of layoffs in corporate America right now, 16,000 layoffs by Amazon while they're funding Melania's movie that nobody wants to see to the tune of about $70 million. And then the Trump FBI raided the Fulton County election headquarters. They took all of the 2020 ballots. You had Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's director of national intelligence, as part of the team leading the raid of the Fulton County, Georgia ballots, which is completely unheard of. All of this is unheard of. And as the American people struggle right now, as inflation surges, as we heard from the chairman of the Federal Reserve about these grim economic times, as a lot of tech companies didn't meet their earnings earlier today. Well, all that's going on. This is what Trump wants to do. He's going to seize the 2020 ballots and talk about prosecuting Obama and all this deranged stuff. We'll break it all down and make it all make sense. I'm Ben Meiselas, and this is the MeidasTouch podcast. Brett and Jordy, good to see you. It seems like we were just talking about Trump threatening to invade Greenland and mistaking Greenland for Iceland, and now here we are.
Here we are every day, a new invasion threat or a new invasion by the Trump regime. It seems like every day Mike Johnson is on vacation. Nobody takes more vacations than this freaking guy and these Republicans. I've never seen anything like this. And the fact that these are the same people who are constantly calling Americans lazy and deriding people who are on programs that help them live and thrive in this country. it's just like the epitome of hypocrisy when Mike Johnson's like, okay, another vacation, guys. Let's go out of session. Let's see what happens here. We're just going to hang out. We're just going to go back, we can go in our districts. We can go to fancy steakhouses. We could be fundraising. It's just so grotesque when you see this. And part of that is a move of obstruction, a big part of it, against the Democrats and against really any sort of accountability for this regime that is completely out of control. We're going to get into all of it. I don't want to belabor the point right now, but I'm going to toss it over to Jordy. Jordy, what's the latest?
What's up, brothers? What's up, Midas Mighty? I am thrilled to get into today's show. Before we do, though, just some housekeeping. We are so close to 6 million subscribers. And you know what? I'm throwing down the gauntlet right now. 30 days from today, we will hit that 6 million. Within the 30 days. That was pretty confusing the way I phrased that. But within 30 days, we'll be at 6 million. I am that confident in this pro-democracy movement and the Midas Mighty. So please check to see if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel right now. A lot of folks may think they're subscribed, but they're actually not. So just do a quick double check and then hit subscribe if you're not. And let's get to 6 million, y'all. 30 days. You could hold me to that, Benji. Where are we starting?
Well, look, when Congress is in session, what happens? There are floor speeches that take place. There are congressional hearings, and the MAGA Republicans can try to do their hearings about toilet bowls or shower heads or whatever, but the hearings still involve Democrats who are allowed to be there. And when you have an adversarial system, and even if they're talking about shower heads or toilet bowls or whatever MAGA deranged conspiracy they want to talk about, it sheds a great degree of light on what the hell is happening. And it's clear that Trump and these MAGA Republicans are involved in cover up after cover up after cover up, whether it's covering up a child sex trafficking ring with the Epstein files, covering up war crimes or crimes against humanity off the coast of Venezuela, covering up Donald Trump's medical records, covering up what is actually happening at these detention centers where you have migrants and citizens being tortured, like concentration camps essentially in the United States, covering up Qatari bank accounts where oil money is being funded or oil money is being transferred from Venezuela as Trump sells oil to right-wing oligarchs using intermediaries who had been accused of bribery before to move the money to Qatar and sell the oil to enrich Donald Trump. Cover up after cover up after cover up taking place right now as the Trump regime is now focused on supporting fringe secession movement individuals in Canada to try to get Alberta to secede because Trump is so jealous of Prime Minister Carney, while Trump is talking about golden ballrooms and golden arches that he wants to build. It is utterly deranged stuff. And, as Donald Trump held a cabinet meeting today, by the way, he kicked out the press right into the questions. Like, he refused to allow the press to ask any questions. He allowed the press to see him ask members of his cabinet some questions where they would just be like, "Oh, Donald, you're doing so good. You're doing so good." What you had the energy secretary, he was like, "Donald, you just saved hundreds of American lives by your policies and bringing coal back. Had we not had coal, hundreds of people would have died as a result of Biden." I mean, he just had stupid stuff like that. Donald Trump didn't call on Kristi Noem. He didn't call on Pam Bondi, which was notable as he was going around the table. But the short period of time that the media was allowed to record, Donald Trump said that he does not want to drive housing prices down. He wants to make housing prices up. As Trump says, the American dream is about rich people owning homes, not poor people or low-income people or middle-class people owning homes. Watch what he says. Let's play it.
One of the things Scott said, though, is, again, existing housing, people that own their homes, we're going to keep them wealthy. We're going to keep those prices up. We're not going to destroy the value of their homes so that somebody that didn't work very hard can buy a home. We're going to make it easier to buy. We're going to get interest rates down. But I want to protect the people that for the first time in their lives feel good about themselves. They feel like that they're wealthy people. And I want them to understand it. There's so much talk about, we're going to drive housing prices down. I don't want to drive housing prices down. I want to drive housing prices up for people that own their homes. And they can be assured that's what's going to happen.
We want to help people become home owners. That's the housing crisis right now, that people can't afford homes. And so we're trying to figure out ways, we should be trying to figure out, Trump isn't, to increase the supply of housing, because the supply has been right now diminished by private equity and others, as opposed to first-time homeowners and others who need the house to pursue the American dream, who work hard but can't even afford rent, yet alone afford a home.
Ben, did you see how he demeaned people also who are trying to get a home? Like, it used to be, you could have, one job, you'd work at a company, you'd get paid a respectable wage, you'd be able to afford a home, you'd be able to afford college, you'd be able to afford all these things on one salary. That doesn't exist today for most people. And Donald Trump, the wording that he used there, I think is very revealing about the way that he views the people of this country. He said something to the effect of, we don't want these people who don't work hard to be able to get access to these homes. I thought that's incredibly revealing. And if you just take all of Donald Trump's statements, he equates wealth with intelligence. He equates wealth with, that means that you should get special treatment in this society. And if you don't have the money, if you don't have millions of dollars to drop on a house, that must mean that you are not working hard. That must mean that you are beneath me. You are beneath anybody, and I'm not looking to help you. And the amount of people that I've seen, especially in the MAGA camp, who have tried to push Donald Trump as somebody who actually wants to lower the cost of housing. I mean, just listen to the guy's own words. I've never also seen anybody who holds so many events, like events on affordability, and then talk shit about affordability during the affordability events. That's why I hate when I see kind of corporate media give him the headlines that he wants. He held the event the other day, I believe it was in Iowa, and he framed it as an affordability event. And so I saw all these local networks, I saw the local news, Donald Trump to put affordability front and center in Iowa. But when you actually watch the speech, first off, 95% of it is not anything to do with prices or affordability. It's the same old deranged rambling that we always see and hear from Donald Trump. But when he does talk about affordability, he says things like that. He says affordability is a hoax. He says it's a con job. He says that there's people who are struggling to get homes just aren't working hard enough, and we're not going to take that away from the wealthy, smart people who are actually doing the work in this country. His whole message is an anti-affordability message, and the media lets him launders it for him as if he is pro-affordability. But I think that's why we're seeing people see through it, because he cannot hide the literal receipts. As I've said on this show before, people know when you go to the grocery store how expensive things are. They know when they try to get a house that housing prices are rising, that they cannot afford homes. Frankly, it doesn't even matter if the rates are low, if the house costs millions and millions of dollars. Like, we need to actually figure out how to make a society that works and put together real solutions. Donald Trump is doing, frankly, the opposite. Jordy.
And to that point exactly, you know who is benefiting from Trump and his economic policies? And shocker, it's the uber rich. They're benefiting from Trump's policies, while everyone else is, quite frankly, getting screwed. There was actually a great Wall Street Journal article that dropped this week, which shows that the overall, it was something like the overall U.S. home sales, they're just slumping across the board, with affordability and high mortgage rates just discouraging typical buyers. Yet, home prices priced at $10 million or more are skyrocketing, both in transactions and total dollar volume. So while the everyday American is getting screwed and squeezed because of Trump's economic policy, ultra-wealthy buyers continue to buy multi-million-dollar properties and capture an outsized share of the housing wealth. So I guess my question is that what you mean by the golden age, Donald? That the top 1% get to thrive while everyone else is just fighting to make ends meet? Is that why you're having these great Gatsby themed parties at Mar-a-Lago, to just rub the wealth disparity that you're making even worse in everybody's face? And I'm just glad. I think we saw a poll that came out that showed that the working class are finally waking up, and Trump's poll numbers with the working class have never been lower.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, as this Lakshya Jain who's a really good pollster, says Trump's underrated political weakness right now is lower income people. In our polling of lower income white people who backed Donald Trump by 26 points in 2024, his approval with low income white people is now at a break even point, and that's been getting lower and lower and lower as Donald Trump is throwing, Jordy, to your point, these eyes wide shut parties with showgirls with legs spread at a champagne hours event in Mar-a-Lago, in bubbles in a pool. I don't even know what words I'm using right now, but that's and that followed Donald Trump throwing a furry party with people who were half naked, wearing dog attire and dog outfits and dog masks, which followed the Great Gatsby theme party of basically half naked girls or women in champagne glasses, like dancing around and gyrating. And that's what was going on in Mar-a-Lago. But Donald Trump was in Iowa, and he was saying, you're not hearing the word affordability anymore because we solved it. Mission accomplished. Here, play this clip.
And they come up with this word affordability. And I saw it even, although you're not hearing it so much anymore. You know why? Because the prices are coming down so much. They don't want it to be an election based on lower prices. But we're bringing down the lower, I like that term better. It's the lower prices. We're bringing them down.
And then before that speech, Donald Trump was at a diner where he's like, I could do whatever I want with the economy. You want me to make the dollar go up, the dollar go down. Jobs go up, I'll do it like a yo-yo. I do it like a yo-yo, everybody. Yo-yo. Here, play this clip.
Would you like to see the dollar's value decline more? Would that be helpful?
No, I'd want it to be just seek its own level, which is the fair thing to do. You could have it, I could have it go up or go down like a yo-yo. I'll give you an example. Unemployment. I could create the greatest unemployment numbers or employment numbers ever. All I have to do is hire 3 million people and put them into the federal government, and you have 10 people, for one job, right?
That's right.
That's right. Oh, y'all, Donald, that's all right. What are you talking about? What do you even mean? Just admitting to manipulating the market. I can make it go like a yo-yo. By the way, the dollar is plummeting. The dollar is crashing. And many people see the crashing dollar as also a sign of very bad economic news ahead if it keeps going in that direction. But everything Donald Trump says is fine because he says China is going to be sending him a bill very shortly. Apparently, China is Congress to Donald, and China is going to be sending him the bill. So all good. Here, play this clip.
And China will be sending me a bill very shortly supporting year-round E15 to my desk very quickly, and I will sign it without delay. Okay? I hope you remember us for the midterms.
China is sending me a bill. What do you mean China is sending you a bill? And then in the speech he gave yesterday with Nicki Minaj, who he then gave, I think she's undocumented, and Nicki Minaj got a gold card to basically get her path to citizenship here for saying that she loves Donald Trump. So she got a gold card, which Trump sells for $1 million to $5 million. Who knows? Does that money go into the Qatari bank account? Why don't we have access to this Qatari bank? Why is there a Qatari bank account where all this money is going into? That's not normal. And the Republicans are like, of course it goes to Qatar. Oh, duh. Really, all the American money goes to Qatar.
Yeah, where else would it go?
Where else would it go? Naturally, it goes to Qatar, everybody. But at that event with Nicki Minaj, Donald Trump, in his spreading lies about California and Governor Newsom, one of the lies Donald Trump's been saying is that, what is it, like Walmart shut down 250 of the 303 California stores. Now, normally when someone says something like that, if it's a politician, like, well, did you mean like 225 or like 150? Like when you hear someone say something like that, like you're like, who would lie about that, right? Like that's a pretty definitive statement. 250 of 303, all just totally false. You're like, Ben, like any part of it? No, just false. Walmart's opened up stores in California. It's just another lie. The same way Donald Trump lies and says that the reason that the California fires back last January were so bad is that California would not allow the water from the Pacific Northwest to flow from Canada because the California governor, Gavin Newsom, didn't turn on the faucet. And Trump says he turned on the faucet, and otherwise all of Los Angeles would be burned down. And it just, you're like, well, what do you mean? Is there a faucet? What's he talking? Just completely made up. Like everything he's saying is 100% false because he lies about everything. And one of the other lies that he is saying, although if it was true, it actually really wouldn't bother me. But one of the lies he says is he goes, you know, as California rebuilds the Pacific Palisades, Governor Newsom is prioritizing low-income housing in the Palisades over the big wealthy people's mansions that were in the Palisades. The Palisades where those homes were burned. It's a very wealthy area, multi-million-dollar homes. And one of Trump's things is like, you can't build low-income housing there. And by the way, when Trump and these MAGAs refer to low-income housing plans in the Palisades, they're talking about homes on the low end that are like $1.75 million and $2 million. And they're saying that those are low-income housing. Also, Donald Trump said that he signed an executive order to allow a federal permitting process to allow the homes to be built and speed up the process of building the homes in Altadena and the Pacific Palisades. There's no such thing as a federal permitting process. You're like, what do you mean? He's making the whole thing up. What California needs is about $40 billion to allow some of these homes to be built because there are a lot of people who are underinsured. There's a lot of denial of claims by insurance companies. And so what's needed, what's holding back construction is federal emergency funding, which Trump and the MAGA Republicans have denied. But instead, Trump signed a phony executive order saying that he's doing federal permitting and saying, you see, I did it. When that's not, it's just a made up thing. He's like making this stuff up. But I want you to watch as Trump talks about his view of low income housing in the Pacific Palisades. And Trump says it as though it would be a cancer, as though there's nothing worse than the idea of low income housing. When the reality is what our nation needs right now is an increase in the housing supply so people can afford housing. That's actually precisely what's needed is housing and allowing people who work a job to have a job with dignity so they can afford a home, and they should be able to afford homes. That's what it should be, not just the super rich get homes. Watch what Trump says at his Nicki Minaj event.
And I don't want a big section of the area built into low-income housing. They want to put low-income housing right smack in the middle of it. And that's not the American dream, you know? You didn't do that. And low-income housing is great. I built a lot of low-income housing, but you don't put it there. This is one of the richest neighborhoods in the world, and we're going to let those people.
Yet again, he reveals who he is.
That's exactly what I said right before, right? I mean, it's the same thing. You could see the disgust he has for people who aren't wealthy. They just I don't want them anywhere near me. Get those dirty pores.
American dream, you
get those dirty pores the hell away from me.
Hell out of here. Get the hell out of here. I want to talk more about that. I want to talk about the imminent invasion of Iran and what could possibly happen thereafter. We should talk about what happens when this compromise bill is reached in the Senate, which again, I don't like the idea that there's a I don't think you can compromise with fascism, but assuming there's a bipartisan deal reached, this then has to go to the House. But the House, MAGA Mike has put on vacation while MAGA Mike parties with Nicki Minaj and gives her gold cards. Talk about that. Got a lot more to discuss on this episode. A reminder, make sure you hit subscribe. To Jordy's point, you may think you're subscribed, but there are some people who think they're subscribed just because they search Meidas every morning, but aren't actually subscribed.
Don't assume that you're already, you know what they say about people who assume, Ben.
And then make sure you turn your notifications on, subscribe to the audio podcast as well. Leave a 5-star review there. That helps us grow. Shout out to the Parnas Perspective audio podcast on the MeidasTouch network, which is now one of the most downloaded podcasts in the first week. Incredible launch there. Great work, Aaron Parnas. And go to store.meidastouch.com for the Meidas merch. Check out our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. First quick break of the show. We'll be right back.
A new year, colder days, this is the moment your winter wardrobe really has to deliver. If you're craving a winter reset, start with pieces truly made to last season after season. Quince brings together premium materials, thoughtful design, and enduring quality so you stay warm, look sharp, and feel your best all season long. Quince has everything you need. Men's Mongolian cashmere sweaters, wool coats, leather and suede outwear that actually holds up against the daily weather and still looks great. Their outwear is especially impressive. Think down jackets, wool coats, and Italian leather outwear that keeps you warm when it's actually cold. Each piece is made from premium materials by trusted factories that meet rigorous standards for craftsmanship and ethical production. By cutting out middlemen and traditional markups, Quince delivers the same quality as luxury brands at a fraction of the price. The result is classic styles you'll love that hold up year after year. Here's my personal favorite, that cashmere sweater from Quince. It's ridiculously soft and doesn't break the bank. Refresh your winter wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/Meidas for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/Meidas. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Meidas.
After all the chaos of the holidays, I hit that familiar wall where it's 5:30, I'm staring into the fridge, and somehow dinner has still not magically cooked itself. I've burned things, undercooked things, and I had been ordering way too much overpriced takeout. But then I got Tavala. This podcast is sponsored by Tavala. Tavala is a smart meal delivery service, fresh meals, and a smart oven that does the cooking for you. And I mean actually does it. You scan the meal's QR code, pop it in the oven, and it cooks everything perfectly. Steaming, baking, broiling, automatically. Zero guesswork. You can save up to $300 on the Tavala Smart Oven when you order 6+ times by heading to tavala.com/Meidas using my code Meidas for a limited time. So just the other night, I made a crispy orange chicken with fried rice in my Tavala, and it was unreal. Chef crafted, real ingredients, tastes homemade, without the headache. I'm truly obsessed. It saves me at least 45 minutes a night. And it's not just for their meals. I've scanned Eggo waffles and store-bought stuff too, and it knows exactly what to do. With high-protein, calorie-smart, gluten-free, and comfort food options, Tavala lets you eat better without the effort. Honestly, it finally removes dinner from my to-do list, and that alone makes it one of my favorite sponsors ever. For a limited time, because you are a MeidasTouch podcast listener, you can save up to $300 on the Tavala Smart Oven when you order meals 6+ times by heading to tavala.com/Meidas and use my code Meidas. That's MEIDAS. That's up to $300 off when you head to tavala.com/Meidas and use promo code Meidas. One last time, that's TOVALA.com, and make sure you use my promo code Meidas, MEIDAS, for up to $300 off the Tavala Smart Oven. Remember, with Tavala, dinner is taken care of.
Let's go. Shout out to our sponsors, man. Links in description of both the YouTube and the audio. Use the links, use the codes. If there's an exit survey, let them know we sent you. One last thing. I feel like I action a lot of the live viewers and the people who watch us on YouTube a lot. I leave the audio listeners out sometimes, and I can admit that, and I apologize to our audio listeners. But hey, audio listeners, please leave a 5-star review. Leave a comment on whichever platform you're on. We're like 500 or so reviews away from hitting 50,000 reviews. So please leave a comment. A positive comment would be awesome. And that 5 stars helps us in the algo. Benji, where to next, big bro?
Just look what Donald Trump was doing last night. Hundreds of social media posts, lies after lies, threats after threats, hundreds of posts, ranting and raving like a lunatic. And it's just like, yeah, that's Donald. That's Donald. That's what he does. He accuses former presidents of treason. He says, maybe it's time. Y'all know I don't like to curse, but this is what the president of the United States is posting. So he starts off by posting this. Maybe it's time to shut the fuck up and let him cook. And then he starts to just post stuff like this. Treason. Trump stuns reporters after declaring Barack Obama will face justice. Holy crap. Dr. Oz just said fraud in California is worse than fraud in Minnesota. He says Russian mobsters are controlling the fraud that's going on. Time for major arrests. So Dr. Oz was in Los Angeles standing in front of an Armenian bakery. He was like, you see this dialect right here? That's the dialect of the Russian mob. Just pause for a second. We'll get into, of course, the fact that the Trump regime is defaming the entire Armenian community and basically accusing all Armenians of frauds and using Dr. Oz, who's many people were saying could be an agent of Turkey or has very close relationships there, as the person to attack the Armenian community. So we could talk about that. But they're running the same playbook that they did in Minnesota by going after the Somalian community and saying they're all Somalians are responsible for fraud. They're saying all Armenians are responsible for fraud. And then he's basically all Armenians are like Russian mobsters. And he was outside in front of a Armenian bakery that he was posting to. He was in front of. It was like, this right here was an area where $16 million of fraud was committed with connections to the Russian mob, and they were prosecuted for it. So you're saying a group of people were committing hospice or home care fraud, and they committed a crime, and they were prosecuted for it by the DOJ, and they're serving prison time, as though they're just discovering that there are people who engage in crimes. And by the way, one of the scammiest people of all times is Dr. Oz. And also, you want to talk about the Russian mob. In the West Wing of the White House, the most prominent photo above the photo of Donald Trump and his grandchildren is a photo of Donald Trump and Putin. Okay, it's a photo of Trump and Putin, the most prominent portrait that's now in the Oval Office, or right by the West Wing, rather, above the photo of his grandchildren. Okay, so you're doing Russian mob connections and things like that. What are you even talking about? And then I'll tell you, I used to work very closely with a lot of lawyers who are Armenian, and I know a lot of doctors in the community who are Armenian, a lot of people who are Armenian. The Trump regime attacking the Armenian community in Los Angeles has completely energized, and the Armenian community is absolutely livid.
They're
but
furious.
It's the same.
I believe there are maybe even more Armenians in Los Angeles than there are in Armenia, like even in like specifically like in Glendale. It's a really big deal for him to be attacking this community, as it is for him to be attacking any community. But I've seen a whole lot of anger about this issue. I think it was a huge misstep. But I think what you're seeing from this regime, and what I want people to kind of take note of here, is the strategy. And it's kind of a similar strategy that Donald Trump uses everywhere. He uses it here and he uses it internationally. He tries to divide and conquer. He tries to divide groups. He tries to pick on a group and say, this group is committing these crimes. This group is doing these sorts of things. So we need to act. We need to get rid of this group, just like he did with the Somali community in Minneapolis and Minnesota. And then he uses that as pretext to do what? To send in federal agents, to try to interfere with elections, to try to interfere with international affairs. This is the strategy that Donald Trump does. It's a divide and conquer strategy wherever he goes. So Donald Trump views, I think, that he was able to do this successfully in Minneapolis by terrorizing the community there, by sending in Greg Bavino, now Tom Homan, in there to terrorize people and divide the community and cause chaos and do everything he did there. And I think right now they're testing the waters here in Los Angeles to try to do the very same thing using the Armenian community as their scapegoat. That's what they do. They just scapegoat communities. They try to weigh, okay, maybe we could get the majority against this minority, and they try to attack them. And it's disgusting, and it needs to be called out. And it's not just about the present moment, but it's about their plans for the future as well. And we'll get into what's been going on in Fulton County. But these are all pretexts for Donald Trump to also try to take action against things, whether it be our election systems or whether it be other functions of local governments, by saying, look, I caught the fraud in XYZ. Now for this election, we need to send agents outside the polling offices. You know what I'm saying? This is all a predicate for them to do things like that in the future. And I'm even worried more about in the future, even more so than the chaos we're seeing right now.
Exactly. And look, Donald Trump is the most divisive president we've ever had, like with his rhetoric. You know what I can't stand? It's the corporate news analysts and the holier than thou that always preach like, hey, it's time we bring down the temperature in this country. We really need a new tone. Yeah, no shit. But you know who keeps going over to the thermostat and raising the temperature? It's Donald Trump and MAGA. If the concern were truly about lowering the temperature, corporate media would start by holding the loudest and most extreme voices accountable. Donald Trump and his regime. The most inflammatory rhetoric by far in all of this on TV and on social media. It's come from Tom Homan and Greg Bavino and Kristi Noem, Stephen Miller, and the president of the United States, Donald Trump, day in and day out. Start there and just stop treating me like I'm an asshole and call this out. I'm just over how corporate media just continues to coddle Donald Trump and this regime day after day.
Well, it's how you protect an abuser. And I think that so many people in the media right now are complicit in protecting abusers. It's like if somebody hit a spouse and then that spouse got angry for being hit, got upset, called for help, did whatever they needed to do to protect themselves and protect their lives. It's quite offensive to me in order to go to that individual who was abused by that individual and say, you got to calm down. You listen, both sides need to take down the temperature right now. You are out of control. Calm it down. That's fucked up. Excuse my language. But that's exactly how the media treats these situations. They go, people in Minneapolis, everyone's got to chill. Listen, both sides really need to take down the temperature right now. And it's like, no, there's one side that initiated it. There's one side that continues to cause chaos in these areas. And if it's a situation where one side simply stops doing what they're doing and everything is okay, then perhaps that side should stop doing and stop terrorizing the people. That's, I think, an easy solution here.
And look, we are not in a constitutional crisis anymore. We are well beyond it. We are in post-constitutional era, authoritarian regime, and a very sloppy, demented, weird authoritarian regime that can't be trusted with anything, that's invading the cities and towns of this country. And so when you see any Democrats compromising with these people and saying, all right, we'll agree to some ICE funding as long as you agree to this, this, and this, we are not dealing with good faith negotiators. We are dealing with Putin bootlickers. We are dealing with authoritarians who hate this country, who hate the people, who are just trying to prop up a right-wing oligarchy. ICE and Border Patrol received hundreds of billions of dollars in funding a year ago. If you look at the chart that we put up right here, and you look at where ICE and Border Patrol were funded before, and in my humble opinion, before 2025, they were funded too much and they were not focused on what they were supposed to be focused on. But then in 2025, they were funded to degrees that were 5, 7, 10x what it was before, to turn into a paramilitary operation to terrorize communities. ICE and Border Patrol need to be abolished. And the individuals responsible for the murders of Alex Preti, Renee Good, and involved in terrorizing and torturing people throughout this country, killing people in detention centers, engaging in these atrocities and crimes against humanity in detention centers, they need to be brought to justice. They need to be prosecuted. Not only should they not have a single cent more, they need to be abolished. They need to lose their funding, and they need to be prosecuted. It's very simple. And that position to me is not an extreme position. It's just the reality of where we are. So compromising at all with these MAGA Republicans, to me, is a betrayal. That said, as we look to the midterms, we have to also make sure that we are, one, electing people who are going to fight for the things that I discussed, but two, that we, the people, are the only reason that we're not in just a complete, the way Germany was. Like, it's not completely there, because the people have stood up to this regime, not the institutions, not the leaders, not the companies. Now, they've all failed, betrayed us, bent the knee, you name it, they've done. But we can't be like, you know what? We're not even going to, we're just going to zone out, and we're not going to focus on the midterms, and we're not going to pay attention, and we're not going to do protests and whatever. We have to still keep the power. We can hold both things in mind. We can be pissed like no other at compromises that are reached with authoritarian. But we also still, in my mind, have to focus on what can we, the people, do. We can make sure we support candidates who don't support these things, right? That's one of the things we can do. We can get out there in the next No Kings protest, which we've been talking about here, and we've been making sure we give groups like Indivisible and Move On and 5051 a platform here where they can talk about the next No Kings protest and what's going on. But let's be very clear what is trying to be pulled off by the midterms. And the Trump regime is going to try to over and over again to figure out a way to stop the midterms. That's the plan. To stop elections, to stop midterms, because all this stuff is out of the authoritarian playbook. The divide and conquer stuff. In the next segment, we'll talk about trying to peel off Alberta for the United States. That's Putin's Donbass plan. All of this stuff is historically things that authoritarians have done before. And we would look at that here in the United States with disgust, but it's here now, and we have to address it and deal with it. So what's happening in Fulton County right now is part of a midterm plan by Trump, and a Trump plan to basically stop the midterms and not recognize the results of the midterms. That's the game plan right here. So what happened there? You had at the Fulton County Election Office, FBI officials raided it, took the 2020 ballots. Not only was the FBI there, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was there. And why is she there? Because what they're trying to claim is that China and all these countries worked with Biden. And Trump tells you what he's saying. Worked with Biden, and they're the reason that Donald Trump really lost the 2020 election, and that Trump didn't really lose, but that there's all of these systemic election issues. So elections need to be shut down, and the results can't be trusted, and all we have to trust is what the regime puts out. And that's what Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, all of them are trying to do with this raid. So now the chain of custody over the 2020 ballots in Georgia has now basically been tainted. And you would say, how would it be tainted? Doesn't the FBI have a whole chain of custody? In the past they did, but now they are the ones who spoliate and destroy. These are the people who covered up and are covering up a child sex trafficking ring, who are making redactions where they don't belong, who are hiding the documents from the people. These are people who federal judges, from George W. Bush judges, Ronald Reagan judges, to Trump-appointed judges, yes, to Biden and Obama and Clinton judges, have said have violated court orders over and over and over again. And these are the people who are going to be screwing with the chain of custody now. And recall, in Fulton County, Georgia, in terms of chain of custody and recounts, there were 3 separate recounts. A hand recount of every vote in Georgia, and then multiple electronic recounts that all confirmed that Donald Trump lost in 2020. It's been the most reviewed election ever, and Trump lost big in 2020. But we could all predict what's going to happen. You're going to have Tulsi Gabbard and the regime. They're going to say, oh, we looked through it. Turns out that there was tampering with it, and now we're deeply concerned about all of what's going on here. So we need to shut it down, and we can't. That's where they want this to go. And by the way, a federal prosecutor from Missouri was the one who signed the warrant in the Fulton County raid. As Greg Bluestein explains, one of the many mysteries about the federal raid of Fulton County's election system is why a federal prosecutor from Missouri is listed on the warrant. That would be Thomas Albus, U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District and a recent appointee by Donald Trump. Federal officials aren't saying why Theodore Hertzberg, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, isn't named in the document. His office isn't even commenting. Right there. So I want to talk a little bit more about what's happening here. Then I want to talk about Trump's attempt to get Alberta to secede, because all of this stuff is related. And then we'll talk about that the United States is close to invading Iran. They're calling it the big plan. The Abraham Lincoln carrier group is in the region. And by all accounts, America is preparing, the United States is preparing a strike there. And, this could result, with all of the instability in that region right now, This is something that we need to take very, very, very seriously. This follows an invasion of Venezuela, a bombing of Nigeria, other, and other attacks throughout the world. Let's take our last quick break of the show. A reminder, hit subscribe. You may think you're subscribed, but you may not actually be subscribed. Let's get to 6 million subscribers. Go to store.MeidasTouch.com, get your Meidas gear. Subscribe to the audio podcast by searching MeidasTouch. Audio listeners, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah, check out that MeidasTouch gear, store.MeidasTouch.com. Go to MeidasPlus.com. That's our Substack. Let's take our last quick break, home stretch, but we've got a lot to discuss on that home stretch. Let's take our quick break.
Okay, have you guys ever seen these chips? They're called masa chips, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that these are the best damn tortilla chips I have ever tasted. Yes, they're seed oil free and made with 100% grass-fed beef tallow, which already puts them in a totally different league, and here's why they're so good. Masa chips have just 3 ingredients: organic nixtamanized corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. That's it. No mystery chemicals, just real food. And they don't just skip the bad stuff, they taste incredible. When you snack on masa, you actually feel satisfied, light, and energized. No crash, no bloat, no gross sluggish feeling afterwards. Because they're made with real food, they're also more satiating. You don't end up mindlessly binging and still feeling hungry like you do with regular chips. Personally, my favorite masa flavor is Cobanero, but I finished those super quickly. I got my second favorite here, the lime. You got to try them all, honestly. And if you love masa, you will love Vandy crisps. Vandy is Masa's sister company, and they make the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips I've ever had. My favorite flavor there is the Herbe de Provence. Ready to give masa a try? Go to masachips.com/Meidas and use code Meidas for 25% off your first order, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa is now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick up a couple of bags before they're gone. That's masachips.com/Meidas, code Meidas, MEIDAS, for 25% off your first order.
Look, I'm not trying to be a fitness influencer. I just want to climb a flight of stairs without feeling like I need an intermission. This podcast is sponsored by Veracity. Welcome to an all-natural way to slim down, get energized, and sharpen your focus. Veracity is revolutionizing health by tackling the root cause of so many issues: metabolism. With Veracity's drug-free, clinically proven, and doctor-formulated solutions, you can support your body's needs to live your healthiest life. If your goal is weight loss, you need to try Metabolism Ignite, the #1 doctor-recommended GLP-1 booster and GLP-1 alternative. No side effects, no allergens. Metabolism Ignite is a natural, safe, plant-based aid that results in an 85% reduction in hunger and is clinically proven to lose, on average, 9 pounds in 90 days. Now, I started Metabolism Ignite a couple weeks ago, just 2 capsules with breakfast, and I feel energized and focused all day. I don't even need my morning latte anymore. So what's in Veracity? It's a unique blend of lemon verbena and hibiscus extracts, green coffee bean extract, and magnesium. With a product like Veracity, a common question is, what are the side effects? Since Metabolism Ignite is made from 100% natural ingredients and is caffeine-free, clinical trials showed no negative side effects from the ingredients in Metabolism Ignite. Now, I love when something is scientifically legit, but doesn't come with a warning label that makes me panic. So make the switch to GLP-1s the natural way. Head to veracityhealth.co and use code Meidas for up to 45% off your order. Once again, that's veracityhealth.co for up to 45% off, and make sure you use my promo code Meidas so they know that I sent you. Shout out to our sponsors. Links in the description of both the YouTube and the audio. Use the links, use the codes. If there's an exit survey, let them know we sent you. Benji, right to next, big bro.
Brett, I know you have some thoughts and perspectives about that Fulton County raid and the broader implications connecting it to the election. Let's talk about that because this is part of a midterm plan. And then let's talk about, though, because all of this stuff comes out of the authoritarian playbook. This is the stuff that Putin does in Russia. This is the stuff that Putin does with neighbors, whether it's, annexing, stealing parts of Ukraine, invading, finding grounds for a pretext to invade. These are the things that Donald Trump is following. Trump's a gangster, right? And when we see a lot of his behavior, like, why is he doing it? He's a criminal. He's been a criminal his whole life, basically. He's a criminal. He's a felon. He's a fraud. He's a sexual abuser. That's who he is. So when he does things consistent with those awful character aspects, that's who he is. Right.
Yeah, and I think, we have to also put this in the context of the actions that Trump is taking and his regime is taking right now are the same kind of strategies that Vladimir Putin has used and authoritarians have used for a very long time. They use the levers of power in order to try to brainwash the population in order to achieve specific objectives. So this raid on the Fulton County election facility is part of that. And something I want to point out about this raid is this picture that was posted earlier today. This is from Ed Martin at the Department of Justice. He was the U.S. Attorney for D.C., no longer the U.S. Attorney of D.C., still at the Department of Justice, one of Trump's right-hand people at DOJ. And he posted this photo of him and lawyer or former lawyers, Sidney Powell. For those who may not remember, Sidney Powell is one of the main people involved in these election conspiracies in the 2020 election, trying to overturn the 2020 election. She quite literally pleaded guilty in Georgia for her actions to try to overturn the election and tamper with the elections in 2020. So when you have Ed Martin at the DOJ posting this image and writing, "Good morning, America, how are you?" on the tail of the Trump regime raiding election offices in Fulton County, I think this should sound every single alarm bell. And as Ben said, the Georgia election, Fulton County, this has been litigated over and over and over again. These ballots have been counted over and over and over again. And guess what? Every single time, the same result. Donald Trump is a loser. Donald Trump lost. Loser, loser, loser. And nothing changes that. But what they want to do is they want to put a conspiracy theorist like Tulsi Gabbard, who is the director of national intelligence, who would have no business doing anything around this. She doesn't have a law enforcement role in this at all. But give her the power now to try to make up some BS report that, yes, now that, it's out of the hands of the actual people who actually count the ballots, and say, now we have the information. Now we have to act on these midterms. Now we need to put in these emergency levers, these emergency, things right now in order to make sure that we don't see this fraud in 2026 or 2028. And so while they are making this out to be about 2020 and saying that this is to check, the veracity of the 2020 election, don't get fooled about what they're doing. This is very much about the 2026 election and the 2028 election and beyond. And we're lucky, I will say, that we live in a system where we have locally run elections. The federal government does not run elections. But this is a way that Donald Trump intends, in my opinion, to meddle with and interfere with these local processes, interfere with these states, interfere with the local election centers. This is how he plans to do it. And I think ICE, by the way, and this DHS funding is also part of that. I think Donald Trump will probably try to deploy these ICE Gestapo troops and other DHS agents near polling places in order to make sure there's no fraud. And I put quotes in that. They're going to try to do everything they can in order to try to scare people away from voting and to try to rig these elections, which is why I think it's such a mistake also, for Democrats to give a single penny to DHS, knowing what they're likely going to do with any of this. But we're still learning, by the way, about that deal. It seems to be right now that the Senate Democrats struck the deal with Republicans in the White House to pass 5 spending bills to fund a large portion of the government for the remainder of the fiscal year, and a stopgap measure to fund the Department of Homeland Security for 2 weeks while they continue to negotiate guardrails to rein in immigration agents. That's the latest. I'm sure there'll be more on that soon. But I think another tactic that we need to be cognizant of is the way in which the Trump administration and the Trump regime also try to launder information through different outlets in order to get a desired result politically, internationally, whatever it is. And I think that's something big that we're seeing right now in Alberta, Canada. Because what Trump does, and Gavin Newsom, his team called this out brilliantly, because it's a tactic that they use a lot, especially to smear Canada and to try to justify federal intervention in California, and especially to justify federal intervention and actions against California. But basically, they have one of their MAGA tabloids make up a story, and then they have a sister organization of that tabloid repeat the story, citing the tabloids report. So think about New York Post, right? New York Post writes some BS expose report. California's doing XYZ. There's fraud amongst our medians, whatever smear they want to push. Then Fox cites that. Then they have the kind of more legitimate looking Wall Street Journal write something on that. Then they have the right-wing influencers on Twitter, a lot of them who are paid by these foreign countries and just paid in general. They then press the button on their machine in order to pump that out to as many people as possible and to sow distrust based on the manufactured story that they got. And then elected officials then use that propaganda to try to do whatever the hell they want to the various states, to try to use it for their elections, whatever it is. And by the way, this is a strategy that comes, like I said, straight from the Soviet Union. They used to plant stories. The Soviet Union used to plant stories in little local papers in like Africa and things like that. And then they would have their organizations cite, quote unquote, legitimate reports coming from a paper in whatever country. And then that would then snowball into a whole variety of stories, and then it would come out of the mouthpieces of the government. So it wouldn't seem like it's a regime-created thing. It would have some sort of air of legitimacy. And that's what Trump tries to do with everything. And so we all need to be aware of that. One other thing we should be aware of is the shifting of the Overton window. And what I mean by that is basically the window, what constitutes legitimate kind of public discourse and where the actual middle of the country lies. It's a shifting scale, and Republicans, MAGA people, have made they were very open about the fact that they wanted to shift the Overton window as far to the right as possible and become as extremist as possible so that the center position appeared to be the MAGA position. I'll be honest, they've been quite successful at that, and they fooled a lot of people into thinking that, especially after the 2024 election. I think that's a big reason why you saw so many people capitulating to Donald Trump. So many people just be so weak and give up, and some of these politicians that have been so cowardly, because in their mind, they saw this shift and they were like, well, I need to be a centrist, and so I need to be in the center of these issues because this country's in the center. But that's bullshit. It's always been bullshit. It's all perception. A lot of it is driven by social media algorithms, and they're not taking into account that the entire country has shifted in such a dramatic way since then. It's why when you look at those polls, Donald Trump is polling disastrously on immigration, formerly one of his top issues. So if you are afraid right now to push back against ICE or push back against the Department of Homeland Security, I frankly don't know what the hell you're doing. I don't know what data you're looking at, because all the data that I'm seeing shows that a majority of the country actually wants to see ICE abolished. Not how do we, maybe we got to train these Gestapo a little better. Maybe if they were just better trained Gestapo, this would all, no. A majority of the country has seen that these ICE agents are out of control and they don't want them to exist anymore. They don't want this organization to exist. And so to me, these politicians need to understand that the actual kind of centrist moderate position right now is to get rid of ICE, is to get rid of this private paramilitary force that is on our streets, terrorizing Americans, terrorizing everybody, quite frankly. I mean, they want to take it internationally. I mean, the whole thing's nuts.
Nailed it, B. Nailed it. The centrist view is to abolish ICE, flat out. That's where we are right now as the country, and more politicians need to wake up and realize that, quite frankly. I want to just comment on your first point when you were talking about the elections, Brett, that you made so astutely, and it's a worry that I genuinely have, is what's going to be ICE's role during the midterms. And I think we kind of know, right? Like this giant ICE army, these White Walkers, as I like to refer to them, because they're creatures. They're building this ICE army and normalizing their disgusting behavior in an effort now to station these creatures at polling places during the midterms, with the excuse being that they're just looking around, trying to make sure that no illegals are trying to vote. This is where we are right now as a country. Don't think that's not going to happen for 1 second. And Brett, you nailed it. I really don't have much more to add there, but that's just genuinely my fear. And I don't think I'm wrong on that. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I when we say, it's the centrist, it's the right view. Like, and no matter what it is, let's even remove the political lens of it, that abolishing a group of thugs, a paramilitary force that terrorizes the community, is something that we should all want them to be abolished and to be prosecuted for terrorizing the community, right? I mean,
it's why these labels to me drive me nuts, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I think I think one of the clearest ways of showing how stupid these labels are is to look at somebody like New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani right now, who's doing things right now like he's getting high marks from basically everybody with the actions that he's taking. I mean, there's been the snowstorms on the East Coast, there's been the snowstorms in New York City. Everybody, I think, across party has given him like an A++ on the way that New York City handled those snowstorms, the way they plowed the snow, the way they actually helped people out during that time. An opportunity where a lot of mayors in the past have not been so good in those situations. But that's not a left issue or a right issue. That's just good governance. And people want good governance. Doesn't matter, left is right or whatever. People want people who are actually just going to help people. And I think Mamdani is showing that. And I think that's why he has this crossover appeal that eludes so many political commentators that they're like, wait a second, how are there MAGA people who like Mamdani and there are centrists who like Mamdani and leftists who like, how do all these, because people want people to actually do things for them. And when you strip away the propaganda, then you actually get to see what people are actually doing for the people. I saw something else that Mamdani was doing earlier today where, I'm paraphrasing, but he's doing something like he essentially his version of like a Doge, which is like, let's look through all of these various agencies of government, find out what's working, find out what's not working. Thing is, people actually like stuff like that. People actually like when you could find ways to actually make government more efficient and work better for the people. The problem people had with a Doge was that it didn't do that. That it was actually about stealing our data, that it was about terrorizing people, that it was about mass firing federal employees just out of spite because Elon Musk thought they were lazy the way Donald Trump thinks anybody who isn't a billionaire is lazy. That wasn't that. And so now he's specifically looking into making permitting better and making it easy for people to get permits for housing and making sure that landlords are actually taking care of the people who rent from them. None of these ever should be left, right, center, whatever sort of issues. They're just about how do we make government more effective, which is the whole thing, which is why the New York Post, the only headlines that they could possibly come up with for the guy is he didn't have great shoveling form when he was helping people shovel the snow. I mean, when you start going to the tan suit moment type headlines and stuff, I think it shows you how kind of morally bankrupt you are, how politically bankrupt you are, and how you really don't stand for anything. You just want your side to win, and you actually don't care how a specific city's doing, how a country's doing. You're just in it for the game of it. And that's not why I'm here.
Well,
I don't get.
To be clear, the game of it is the accumulation of power and wealth at the expense of the general welfare and well-being of the country. And in fact, to maliciously inflict pain. You know how like in the superhero movies, the bad guy is always the one who like wants to like suck up all of the energy and resources and take it away while people suffer. And someone's like, well, why does he want to do that? That's like actually what is going on. It is to pillage. It is to take. It is to steal. And it is to create basically a welfare system or a socialistic system for the billionaires to accumulate wealth and screw everybody else over. It's why those statements from Donald Trump, and when he goes to Iowa, when he goes around and he says, mission accomplished, we saved everything. The way we're going to deal with my insurance plan, my health plan is we're going to give you $2,000. Doge, we're going to give you Doge dividend checks. Tariffs, we're going to give you tariff rebate checks. The country that is tariff is paying it, not the consumer. All of these lies, the fire hydrant of lies to bend reality, and the enablers here who spread the lies versus telling the truth. Ultimately, when it comes to tariffs, if you were to say, here's the plan with tariffs. Yes, it's going to be passed on to consumers. You are all going to pay more. Things are going to be very difficult for you. But we believe in the long term that by tariffing the world and by us taxing ourselves more money, we become stronger because we have a better negotiating position to do better free trade. That's not what actually is going on. It's chaos. But if you articulated the plan truthfully and you describe something, then people can say, I like that, I don't like that, that makes sense, that doesn't make sense. But the whole plan is tariff the world, screw America's trading relationship, screw the rest of the world, make our consumers pay more money so you can have a situation where Donald Trump gets to have these right-wing oligarchs march into the Oval Office, beg him for exemptions so he can personally make money off of the transaction of giving tariff exemptions to right-wing oligarchs who curry favor to him at the expense of people. And that's what's truthfully happening. Now, you for whatever reason, you may go, amazing, that's what I want. Right-wing oligarchs bribing Donald Trump while I get screwed. But I'm not giving you a democratic position. That's actually what is happening right now. And that's a fact. That's just the reality. I mean, again, you look at what's happening with Trump's international relations as Trump attacks the United Nations, attacks the G7, attacks NATO. America is weaker. The global world order is less stable. Canada is now doing deals with China, which it views as a more reliable partner than the United States. You've got Prime Minister Keir Starmer from UK in China right now. The European Union has Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the EU Commission, striking what they call the mother of all trade deals with India. You've got South Korea and Canada doing deals for auto and doing military deals. You've got Canada looking to buy Sweden's planes over the F-35s, while America's response is, if you buy the planes from Sweden, Canada, then we're going to get rid of NORAD. And in fact, we're now going to fly F-35s over Canada whenever we want if you don't buy our F-35s. NORAD is the North American Air Defense Command. And so Trump's ambassador to Canada says, well, I guess if you don't buy our F-35s and you have the Sweden planes over Canada, you're still going to need the F-35s over Canada, so we're going to fly over Canada whenever we want to intimidate you. And that's exactly why Canada is saying, that's why we don't want the F-35s, because we don't trust you. And Denmark bought F-35s before Trump started attacking Denmark, because Denmark viewed this as something that can never possibly happen based on its past relations with the U.S. Well, then after Donald Trump threatened the sovereignty of Greenland and Denmark, Denmark now saying, oh, crap, because we bought the F-35s, we have to rely on the United States for maintenance and the Defense Department to give us all the specs. So now our airplanes we're beholden to the United States, which is exactly why Prime Minister Carney has done a full review of whether or not to buy the F-35s. On paper, the F-35s may be a more technically better plane, but when you factor in becoming compromised by the Trump regime, people are saying, you know what, maybe we're not going to get the F-35s, or we're not going to get the air defense systems from the U.S. because we can't be compromised and we have to build our own systems here. And
it's
then
a gangster government, has been described before. And when I say that, the extortion is a big part of the gangster government. And so instead of calling any of these deals or sales or whatever you want to call it, when the United States is now engaging with another country or anybody, for that matter, but let's discuss international for a second. Do not view that as a legitimate deal. It's an extortion scheme. Everything they do is an extortion scheme, and they want to be able to hold leverage over people. And that's what they're doing here with these F-35s. And quite frankly, it's why everyone should remember that you got to stand up to these people and you can't back down to these people. Because if you relent, you might think, oh, well, I'm taking it's going to get worse. If I don't do it now, then they're going to try to hit me up. It's going to get worse no matter what. And so you could either figure out a path on your own and with other partners who are actually going to treat you with a modicum of respect, or you could try to go and tie yourself to the United States, who inevitably, once they get that little bit from you, are going to come back for more, and they're going to come back for more, and they're going to constantly try to use that as leverage to destroy you.
And that's why Prime Minister Carney has firmly stood up against Donald Trump. Remember, Prime Minister Carney famously rejected any type of trade deal or fake trade deal that Donald Trump was saying. Carney's not doing it. I mean, Carney knew exactly what was going to happen. And even you're seeing when Europe entered into the fake trade deal with the U.S., when others had, Donald Trump then used that as leverage against them, when they wanted to help out Denmark. So you can't do business with this felon, right? You can't do business. You can't interact with him from any expectation of good faith. You can't do deals with the mob or the mafia. And that's what Trump is. That's what this regime is, a gangster regime. And now Trump's way to try to retaliate against Canada is to work with the fringe groups in Canada that want to secede. And they're working with Danielle Smith, the MAGA Maple premier of Alberta, who was the one hanging out in Mar-a-Lago when she thought Pierre Poilievre, the Maple MAGA leader at the conservative federal level, when they thought he was going to win, when Trudeau was the prime minister. And then Prime Minister Carney surged ahead, the right guy or the right person for the right moment right there in Canada. So now Trump, again, is doing exactly what Putin does in Donbass and tries to find a local person and then use that as pretext in order to create a crisis and say, hey, look, they want to secede and Canada needs to, whatever. And he looks for these leverage points like mafia leverage to try to put his knee into your neck. And you have to stand up against this guy. You have to push back against the bully, even out of self-interest is what you have to do. And you look at everything. And so I'll just leave you with this because I could give you 10,000 other examples like this, but then the show would be going on forever. You got the United States entering into one of these other deals where they've taken an interest in a rare earth company, right? So you learn about this deal. Trump administration takes stake in rare earth sector. Why is the U.S. taking stakes in companies in and of itself, right? Which this is why the Republican Party, they claim they were the Second Amendment, except when you're peacefully protesting and you have a concealed carry permit, then you deserve to die. They say they care about the First Amendment until you're peacefully protesting against their acts of terrorism. They say they care, about the Fourth Amendment until they want to just search through your home whenever and they don't want warrants. They say they care about the Fifth Amendment, then they take away your life, liberty, and property. They say they care about states' rights and the 10th Amendment, and then they invade states. And they say, don't tread on me, and then they tread on you. They say that they're originalists and they care about the founding principles of the Constitution, which was no kings until they want their own authoritarian despot. They say they're states' rights. They're not states' rights. They say they're strict constructionists or strict textualists. Then they read the text. They don't like the text, so they say, hey, ignore those words. Those words don't matter. What they are gangsters. They're sociopaths, and they have no core meaning. It's why it's hard to debate them because they actually don't feel or care about anything. And when you try to approach debates with these MAGA people and actually try to find good faith, whatever, they're never involved in good faith. So all of their arguments are straw men. They're bogus. They use counterfactuals that aren't. There's no way to have rational conversations with sociopaths. So you just have to identify evil, bad people. That's it. They're evil, bad people who want to hurt you. They're put on this earth to hurt. Whatever reason, they feel certain ways about themselves, whatever it is. They crave power or notoriety, or whatever it is. But they are here to hurt. And they're bad. And we could analyze it from every which way, but that's what it is. Trump administration takes another stake in the rare earth sector. The administration announced a $1.6 billion deal with U.S. Rare Earth, but the firm does business with Cantor Fitzgerald, which is run by Howard Lutnick, or Howard Lutnick's kids run the company now in his place while he's the Commerce Secretary. Every one of these deals has a component like this. So I'm not going to keep on going on and name all one. Go watch the other hot takes that I do. But this is just a perfect example. How is this helping people get health care? How is this people access housing? How is this people get better education? How is this helping people live better lives? It isn't. It is about the oligarchy. It is about taking away your happiness, your freedoms, your rights, your resources to take it for them. Because these right-wing oligarchs are not content with 5 yachts, they need 10. They're not content with 5 mansions, they need 50. They're not content with, whatever. I could go on and on and on. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. and we, the people, need to call it out and stand up to it. That's what we're going to do every day here on the show. I want to thank everybody for watching. Please make sure you hit subscribe. You may think you're subscribed, but you didn't actually be a subscriber. Double check, subscribe to the audio podcast, leave a 5-star review on the audio podcast. Help us hit that 50,000 review marker. Go to store.MeidasTouch.com and get the Meidas merch. Rock that Meidas merch gear proudly. For those in Canada, we have 100% made in Canada Meidas maple stuff for Canada. Just the Meidas maple stuff is made in Canada. The other stuff is made in the U.S., 100% union made in the United States. So check out all of that. And we appreciate you. MeidasPlus.com is our Substack. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Brett, anything else you want to say?
Nothing else to add. Jordy, take it away.
Shout out to the Meidas Mighty.
The Meidas Mighty standing strong against the fascists. We sing our song. We will get it right whenever.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.